Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when everything just feels off. The plans you made don't excite you anymore. The goals you were chasing don't feel like they matter. And when you wake up in the morning, there's this dull, heavy feeling that you can't quite explain. That's what it feels like to be lost. And when you're in that space, the instinct is to panic, to scramble for answers, to push yourself to figure it all out fast. But the truth is, the last thing you need in that moment is to rush. Instead, what you need to do is pause, just stop, take a breath, not because everything will magically fix itself while you stand still, but because there's wisdom in stillness. Most people are afraid to stop because they think it means giving up. But pausing isn't quitting. It's actually the bravest thing you can do when you feel lost, because here's what happens when you pause. You make space, space to feel, space to listen, space to be honest with yourself. That space is where the real answers start to show up, but you can't access that space if you're constantly distracting yourself with noise, if you're forcing productivity or scrolling endlessly or pretending to be okay when you're not. When I was younger, there were times I felt completely untethered. It felt like I had fallen off the map. I wasn't sure what direction to take, and I'll be honest, those weren't the loud, busy times. They were the quiet, empty ones. They were moments when I didn't have a title, or a plan, or a next big thing, and that emptiness, it was uncomfortable, but looking back, that's where the most growth came from. You have to learn to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. You have to learn to resist the temptation to fill the silence too quickly, because in that silence, in that space where you feel lost, something powerful can begin to take shape. It's like trying to tune into a frequency. You won't hear the right signal if you're constantly flipping through the stations. You have to slow down, be still, let the static settle, and sometimes that means letting yourself feel everything that comes up. The confusion, the frustration, the sadness, even the fear, we're conditioned to push those feelings aside. You stay positive, stay focused, stay strong, but real strength is allowing yourself to feel lost and not letting it break you. Real strength is looking around at your life, admitting that it doesn't make sense right now, and deciding to stay curious anyway. There's something incredibly liberating about admitting you don't have the answers. Because once you do that, you stop pretending. You stop forcing yourself into roles or routines that don't fit anymore. And that honesty, that's where the shift begins. It's not about instantly finding your purpose or having some grand revelation. It's about starting with what's real, and what's real might just be, I don't know, and that's okay. You don't need to know everything today. You don't need to fix it all right now. All you need to do is show up for yourself, fully, truthfully, and without judgment. Sometimes people ask, what should I do when I feel lost? And the first thing I tell them is, stop doing, start listening. Listen to what your body is telling you. Listen to what your heart has been quietly whispering beneath all the noise. Listen to the parts of you that feel worn out or uninspired or restless. They're trying to tell you something, but you won't hear them if you're moving too fast. This world rewards hustle. It celebrates certainty. But feeling lost isn't a flaw. It's not a sign that you've failed. It's a signal that something needs to change. And if you can just pause long enough to pay attention, you'll start to notice the direction that's been quietly calling you all along. Don't run from being lost, lean into it, because being lost means you're still searching. It means you haven't settled. It means you're still alive enough to want more, to feel more, to become more. When you feel lost, your first instinct might be to look outward, to search for answers in other people's lives, in the success stories around you, or in the constant flood of information coming at you every day. You start comparing, scrolling, searching. You're trying to find a signal, something that makes sense, but the more noise you consume, the more disconnected you become from what's real, what's you, and that's the paradox. We think staying connected will help us find clarity, but often it only drowns out the voice that actually matters, our own. So here's what I've learned. When you feel lost, disconnect to reconnect. And I don't mean run away from life. I don't mean isolate yourself forever. What I mean is, give yourself permission to step back from the screens, from the pressure, from the people who expect you to be on all the time, from the versions of yourself you've had to perform just to survive. Step away from all of it, not to escape, but to return to something more honest. You won't find direction if your mind is constantly cluttered. You won't find yourself if you're always lost in someone else's world. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is turn everything off and sit in the quiet. No notifications, no to-do lists, just you and the silence, and I get it, silence can be uncomfortable. We're not used to it. We've been conditioned to fill every second. But here's the thing. Clarity doesn't scream. It whispers. And if you want to hear it, you've got to quiet the noise around you. And more importantly, the noise within you. You can't keep pouring your energy into everything around you and expect to feel grounded. You can't keep reacting to every ping, every post, every opinion, and still expect to hear your own thoughts. At some point, you have to unplug from the chaos and check in with yourself. I've had moments in my life where everything was moving fast, so fast I didn't even realize how far I'd drifted from my values, from my center, from the things that really mattered, and the only way I found my way back was by disconnecting, stepping out of the current, giving myself time to breathe. You'd be surprised what surfaces when you remove the noise. You remember what you love, you remember what excites you, you remember who you are when no one's watching, and that version of you, the raw, unfiltered, no performance required version, that's the one you need to hear from when you feel lost. This world will keep spinning whether you're constantly plugged in or not, but your internal compass, that only resets when you slow down, when you stop trying to keep up with everything and instead ask yourself, what actually matters to me? What do I want my life to feel like, not just look like? That kind of reflection doesn't happen in a rush. It doesn't happen while you're doomed, scrolling or chasing the next distraction. It happens when you create space. Space to breathe, to think, to be, without judgment, without comparison. So take a walk without your phone. Journal even if your words don't make sense yet. Go somewhere that makes you feel small in a good way. Somewhere that reminds you the world is bigger than your worries, but your presence in it still matters. When you disconnect, it's not about shutting people out. It's about tuning in to your intuition. To your truth, you might not hear it clearly right away, and that's okay. But over time, if you stay patient, that quiet voice inside you will start to speak up again. It will remind you of what you care about. It will point you slowly, gently, back toward yourself, and that's where the real answers live, not out there, but in here. So when you feel lost, don't chase more noise hoping it'll make things clearer. Strip things back, unplug, be still, because the person you're looking for, the one who knows what to do next, is already with you. You just need to make the space to hear them. When you're lost in life, it's easy to think the answer lies in doing more. More goals, more plans, more pushing forward. But what if the solution isn't adding something new, but remembering something old, something foundational? When you feel like you've drifted off course, don't just ask where you're going, ask who you are. Go back to your core, because sometimes feeling lost is really just forgetting what truly matters to you. And I mean your real values, the things that quietly define how you move through the world, how you love, how you create, how you decide what's worth your time. I'm not talking about the things you post in a bio or put on a vision board. I'm talking about what actually drives you when no one's watching, what you stand for, what feels non-negotiable in your soul. The tricky thing is, we don't lose these values overnight. We drift slowly, subtly. Life gets louder, faster, more demanding. Other people's expectations creep in. We start chasing things that look good on the outside, but don't feel right on the inside. And before we know it, we're living a life that checks all the boxes, but doesn't light us up. That's when the disconnection hits. That's when you wake up one day and think, how did I end up here? And you start searching. But sometimes the search just sends you in circles, because no matter how far you look, nothing out there seems to fill the gap. That's because you're not missing a destination, you're missing alignment. You're missing that feeling of being connected to your own truth. So what do? You go back, you remember, you ask yourself, what did I care about before the world told me what I should care about? What moments in my life have felt the most real, the most alive? What makes me feel proud of the way I show up, not for applause, but for peace, and sometimes the answers are surprising. You realize that what actually matters to you isn't status or money or recognition, but integrity, or kindness or creativity. You realize that success isn't a job title. It's the feeling of waking up and knowing you're living in a way that's honest. That feels right, even if no one else understands it. That's why values matter so much. They're like a compass. Even when everything around you feels uncertain, they stay steady. They remind you what to say yes to, and what to walk away from. And when you're lost, they're not just helpful. They're essential. But to use that compass, you have to stop long enough to hear it. And more importantly, you have to trust it. You have to believe that your inner truth is worth listening to, even if it's quieter than the noise around you. Especially because it's quieter than the noise around you. There have been points in my own journey where the outside world looked at me and thought I was on top of everything, successful, clear, certain. But inside, I knew something wasn't aligned. I had to step back and ask myself, not what would impress people, but what would fulfill me, not what would make headlines, but what would make sense. And the only way I could answer that honestly was by reconnecting with the values I'd built my life around from the start. And I'll tell you something. Those values don't always lead to the safest choice, or the easiest, but they always lead you to the right place, a place that feels like home, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. So if you're feeling lost, don't rush to chase something new. Slow down and return to something true. Ask yourself what really matters to you. Not 5 years from now, not in the eyes of the world, but right now, in your gut. What would your life look like if you built it around that? You might not have every step figured out today, but when you move in alignment with your values, even the smallest step forward feels right. And that's how you find your way again, not all at once, but one grounded decision at a time. When you're lost, it's tempting to think you need to map out the entire journey before you move. That you need the whole plan, the 5-year vision, every step laid out perfectly before you take the first one. But the truth is, when you're stuck in that mindset, you don't move at all. You wait. You overthink. You get paralyzed by the size of the unknown, and the longer you sit in that uncertainty, the heavier it starts to feel. Here's what I've learned. Clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. Not doing everything. Not doing what everyone else is doing. But doing one small, intentional thing that reconnects you to forward motion, that creates momentum, even if it's messy, even if it's unclear. Even if it doesn't look like much from the outside, one step, that's all it takes to change everything. Not because that one step solves it all, but because it breaks the inertia. It moves you from passive to active, from stuck to searching. It tells your mind and your heart, I may not know the destination, but I refuse to stay frozen. When I look back, the most pivotal moments in my life didn't start with big decisions. They started with small ones. Small steps that didn't seem significant at the time, but ended up opening doors I didn't even know existed. And if I'd waited until I had it all figured out, I would have missed them, completely. Sometimes we wait for a sign. For a surge of motivation, for certainty, but the truth is, action comes before clarity. You don't wait to feel confident and then take the step. You take the step, and confidence grows from that. Direction grows from that. I know it can feel overwhelming. When you're lost, everything feels like too much. The future is blurry, and every option looks equally confusing. But instead of trying to solve your whole life, just ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today that feels meaningful? Not perfect, not impressive, just real. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you trust. Maybe it's journaling for 10 minutes, or going for a walk, or finally signing up for that course that's been in the back of your mind. Maybe it's deleting something from your life that doesn't align anymore. You don't have to know what comes next. You just have to take that one honest step. That's how momentum works. You start small, and the path starts to reveal itself. And don't underestimate what a small step can do. A conversation, a moment of reflection, a decision to show up for yourself in a new way. These are not minor things, they're signals. They tell your subconscious, I'm not giving up. I'm still in this, and sometimes that quiet act of resistance is all you need to get back in motion. You don't need a grand plan. You don't need to chase some massive breakthrough. What you need is the courage to try something, even if you don't know where it leads. Because the path forward doesn't usually appear until you start walking. The next step doesn't come into view until you take the first one. So stop waiting for the big picture to make sense. Stop holding your breath until you feel completely certain. You may never feel ready. That's okay. You don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing to move, willing to learn, willing to trust that even the smallest action taken with intention is better than standing still in fear. Life doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present, to show up, even when you're unsure, especially when you're unsure. When you're feeling lost in life, one of the first things you might try to chase is motivation. You think, if I can just get motivated again, I'll be fine. So you wait for that spark, that rush, that fire that used to push you forward. But the truth is, motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Some days it shows up. Most days it doesn't. And when you're lost, it shows up even less. So instead of chasing motivation, shift your focus. Look for meaning. Because meaning doesn't come and go like a mood. Meaning sticks. Meaning grounds you. Meaning gives you something deeper than excitement. It gives you something worth enduring the uncertainty for. That's the difference. Motivation is about energy. Meaning is about direction. Motivation says, I feel like doing this. Meaning says, even when I don't feel like doing this, I'll keep going, because it matters. When everything feels confusing and you're questioning your next move, stop asking, what excites me right now? And start asking, what matters to me right now? Because the things that matter don't always feel exciting in the moment. In fact, they're often quiet, subtle, unimpressive to anyone but you. But that's where your compass is. You know, there were times in my own life when I had no energy left. No certainty, no plan, but what kept me going? What got me out of bed, what made me keep building, keep creating? Wasn't motivation, it was meaning. A sense that what I was doing had value, even if no one else saw it yet. That the work mattered even if I couldn't always explain why. That there was something inside me I had to honor, and you don't have to be working on something world-changing to feel that. You just need to find something that feels honest. Real, something that reflects the parts of you that are still alive and still trying, even when everything feels blurry. So how do you find that? You slow down enough to ask yourself better questions. Not, what's going to get me noticed? Not, what will make me successful the fastest? But, what could I spend time on even in silence? That would feel like time well spent. Sometimes the answer is creating something. Sometimes it's helping someone. Sometimes it's learning or rebuilding or simply being present with yourself in a way you haven't been in a long time. And no, it might not light up your brain with excitement right away, but it'll leave a deeper imprint. It'll pull you forward on the days when nothing else will. Don't get me wrong. Motivation is great when it's there. Ride it when it comes, but don't build your life around it. Build your life around meaning, build it around values, around moments of quiet conviction, not just bursts of enthusiasm. Because what really gets you through the lost seasons isn't hype, it's heart. It's showing up for the hard stuff because something inside you says, this is who I am. It's making decisions not based on what looks good, but based on what feels right. It's knowing that even if today feels off, you're still anchored to something that matters. And sometimes finding meaning isn't even about doing something new. It's about seeing what you're already doing in a new way. Maybe your job isn't your passion, but is there someone there you can lift up? Maybe you're not where you want to be yet, but what can you learn where you are? Meaning doesn't always show up in grand gestures. A lot of times it lives in small shifts in perspective. You don't need to wait for a lightning bolt to hit you. You don't need the perfect plan or perfect energy. What you need is to choose meaning again and again, and trust that if you stay rooted in that, the next steps will come. When you feel lost, it can feel like you're the only one who's ever been there, like everyone else has it figured out, like they're moving forward while you're stuck in place. But the truth is, every single person you've ever admired has had moments where they felt directionless, uncertain, invisible even. It's part of the process, not a detour, but a chapter. And sometimes the only way through that chapter is by giving yourself permission to keep going even when it doesn't make sense yet. That's where grace comes in. Not just pushing yourself harder, not just grinding through, but allowing yourself space to be human in the in-between, allowing yourself to not have all the answers and still show up anyway. That's the work most people never talk about. Not the highlight reels, not the big wins, but the quiet persistence in the dark, when the outcome isn't clear and the reward isn't instant, when you're building something inside yourself long before the world sees it. Because what you do in those moments, the way you treat yourself, the way you choose to show up when no one's clapping, that shapes who you become. You can't always control the speed of clarity, but you can control your commitment to staying in motion. To keep putting one foot in front of the other, not because the path is certain, but because you believe something is still unfolding. There were stretches of my life where nothing looked like it was working, where everything felt like it was falling apart or starting too slow or going too fast in the wrong direction, and I had to learn to be okay in that space, not to rush it, not to fake a sense of certainty I didn't have, but to hold steady, to keep showing up, to trust that even if I didn't see the whole picture, the process still mattered. There is a kind of inner strength that gets built in the waiting, in the confusion, in the space between where you are and where you think you should be. And that strength becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. But you don't get it if you quit on yourself too early. You don't build it if you only show up when things feel good or look promising. So if you feel like you're wandering right now, if you've lost your rhythm or your confidence or your sense of purpose, I want you to know something. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're in the middle of becoming. You're being reshaped, rewired, repositioned for something ahead that you can't see yet. And your job right now isn't to know exactly what that is. Your job is to stay in it, to stay awake, to stay honest, to keep moving through it, even if it's slow, even if it's silent, and you don't have to be heroic about it. You don't have to pretend it's easy. Some days the most powerful thing you can do is just not give up. Just decide to keep showing up to your life, however messy it looks, however unsure you feel. Give yourself credit for that. Not everything has to be dramatic or triumphant to matter. Quiet resilience matters. Continuing to try when no one sees it, that matters. Every time you choose to keep going, even when you feel lost, you're telling the future version of yourself, I didn't stop. I stayed in the fight. And one day, that will mean everything. You'll look back on the season you're in now, not with shame, but with gratitude, because you'll realize that what felt like getting lost was actually you shedding what wasn't yours, letting go of stories that never fit. Slowing down long enough to hear your own voice again, and maybe that's what this whole thing is about, not finding the perfect path, but finding the real one, the one that's honest, the one that's aligned, the one that's yours.